Hi, everybody. For my project, I am redesigning schoolyards. Driving past school grounds, I realized that they really haven't changed much since I was a little girl. A long time ago in school, we had asphalt playgrounds with basketball courts, some four-square courts, and a few benches. When my son went to grammar school about 30 years later, he had the addition of handball courts and some climbing apparatus. And I've always thought that schoolyards, that there was a missed opportunity there. When my son was a little guy, I would take him and his cousins out for outings, and we would go to Natural History Museum or to the Art Museum or take them to gardens. And I remember how excited and engaged the kids would be in that environment. So I thought what I wanted to do was to bring that kind of excitement into the schoolyards. So what I want to do is to transform the asphalt playgrounds into a learnscape and create a lot of excitement for the kids coming in. For my site selection, I was looking for large campuses that were located within a residential area, and I wanted them to be close to each other. My idea is to create some magnet schools and to have each school site have a specific curriculum and allow the students to move between the campuses through the school year. So I found those sites in the Newberry Park, which is the western part of Thousand Oaks. I found 3 schools that are located within 1.2 miles of each other. 2 of the schools are grammar schools that run kindergarten to 5th grade. The 3rd school runs from kindergarten to 8th grade. Each school will have an amphitheater, a plaza, community gardens, a habitat garden, an edible garden, traditional play areas for the ball sports, imaginary play areas for open-ended play, the lunch area, multi-use lawn area, and the outdoor learning labs. The existing architecture on all 3 sites is very geometric. This drove the design of my curriculum areas. I used squares and circles as the basis, and I did some research about the symbolism behind the shapes. And squares represent safety, security, and permanence, and circles connotate the cycle of time, equality, and rhythm. And all of these attributes were listed in the school mission statements. The curriculum for each site was determined by the site architecture, the history, or the use of the adjacent areas. Kimber Road connects all 3 of my sites. What I propose to do is to create a tree-lined corridor with some arbors to make it a more inviting space. I also am proposing bike lanes on both sides to facilitate travel between the sites. Sycamore Canyon School is my westernmost campus. The school is located between Rancho Sierra Vista, where Chumash artifacts have been unearthed, and the 101 freeway, which runs along the historic El Camino Real path that connected the California missions. So the curriculum at this school is history, social studies, and geography. The site's design is based on circles and squares. I started off with a mission courtyard, which represents my square. It's flanked by classrooms up here. Then I have a garden that demonstrates the edible and medicinal plants that the missionaries grew. There's a pond here, and then I have a Chumash village, and the traditional tool house represents the circles. I have an ethnobotanical and pollinator garden as well. Bisecting the site is a tree walk, and I'm using the tree walk to introduce geography to the students, and what I propose is to have trees representing different regions of the world to be planted there. Cypress Elementary School is located adjacent to a retention pond that's part of the Cayugas Creek watershed. So this site lent itself to the study of science. The design of the existing classrooms determined kind of the circular pattern I used in my design. There are 4 learning pods on this campus. The first focuses on the study of astronomy and weather. The design for this lab is based on Saturn, and my hope is that perhaps the campus can be opened up on moonless nights so that the community could come in and do some stargazing. The second pod focuses on biology and botany, and for that school I created a classroom up in the trees because I thought that'd be a great way for the kids to learn about the flora and the fauna. The third learning pod is for conservation and the life sciences, and I use the inspiration of the life cycle as a frog. And on here I have representations of the different metamorphoses that the frog goes through. and I used a lotus leaf as the basis of that. The final learning pod is geology, and I have a geological walk that will showcase the various rock formations of Conejo Valley. And at the southern end of the campus, there's a pond and a creek, and this could be used for wildlife observation and for science experiments. Maple Elementary School is the easternmost school on Kimber Road. And the existing school, the buildings replicate a checkerboard pattern. So for this school, I'm using math, music, arts, and language for the curriculum. And the common tie between these disciplines are patterns and abstract symbols. I offer 4 art studios on this campus. I have a pottery studio, a textile studio with a deck, a sculpture studio with an outdoor space, and a fine arts studio surrounded by a deck. The habitat gardens here are to attract butterflies and birds, and each of those have ponds. And I also have an enclosed butterfly pavilion and an aviary. The math classroom has an outdoor lab where kids can learn about volume and area and study the geographic shapes. Language will be studied in 2 gardens. One is an alphabet flower garden. The second one is a labyrinth with a storytelling symbol in the center. And in front of each of these spaces, I have topiary gardens that will announce the kind of studio garden that's behind that space. Music is taught through outdoor music instruments as well as sound playing. There are the imaginary playground here. The theme for that is trees and knolls, and I have tree houses, zip lines, and grassy knolls for the kids to climb up and roll down. The Latin root of the word educate is divided into 2 parts. The first is the letter E, which means out of. The second part is to serve, which is to lead or drop. I believe the schoolyard can be used to draw out the potential of each child. Children learn through play and by doing. I hope to engage the community by creating a stimulating environment that offers hands-on learning experience. I hope that the children will be physically challenged by my playgrounds and that will fire their imagination, and that the gardens will be a place of beauty and a place for the children to have quiet time, and also for the community to enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of me? Yes, Pat.
Can you talk about the spine that connects all of these 3 sites? Well, what's on it? What's the experience?
It's the tree line corridor right here. So I have on one side, I have the double row trees with some arbors in it, because in Thousand Oaks it can get pretty warm, and I just wanted to give some rest from that. And then I was thinking that this could be incorporated as part of the physical education part of this thing, so that the students could walk from school to school, maybe make a running track and some exercise experience along the way. And I also want to introduce some aspects of the curriculum of the different schools in, either through artwork or low walls or something with mosaics that would represent as they're moving from site to site.
And that's really a streetscape.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a little bit of an enlargement here of this corner area here.
I think that's a really good idea, that you would connect them in a bold way. And it's bold enough that if you didn't get to do the arbors, mosaics, it would still be really strong. I have another comment that when I look at your tree walk perspective, it looks very foresty.
Right here?
Yes. And attractive and inviting. But your plan, it looks like it might be 40 scale feet.
Yeah. It's not as dense.
Yeah, it's almost like it wants to be a snake.
Well,
they're
yeah,
all
because it
connected.
kind of stretches out to bisect it, so I could definitely add more trees to make that a richer
If it were
experience.
denser, it would
Yeah.
be a tree walk as opposed to a few trees along the walk.
Thank you.
The idea is very strong.
Thank you.
Stephanie.
Yeah, I love how you use some of these to inform the rest of your design. And, I guess, is there a reservoir right next to Cypress?
Yeah, it's a
Elementary
retention
School?
pond.
And is the water visible?
Yes, very visible. This is a picture of it right here.
Oh, I see, okay. I don't think I realized that was it. So, it's quite possible if the frogs have been killed, possibly.
Actually, this is just a service road right here.
Oh, okay.
So, and there's a connector between, because there's an existing creek right now that
Okay.
connects underneath this area here, so there's a connection between those spaces. So I just kind of threw in the pond.
Okay, all right, that's kind of nice.
Thank you.
And did you even think, that's your amphitheater down in there? S?
Right here.
Okay, what's S? Life stages conservation.
Yeah, this is the life cycle learning lab.
Uh-huh.
So this is like the frog one.
Okay, all right. So you have tadpoles and,
Hopefully, yeah, and little eggs and yeah. And I also have, I'm picturing, having things on the ground that the kids can look at that would represent the different stages of the frog.
so let me ask you this. Do frogs prefer shade? If you're gonna have a life cycle thing about frogs, did you look at the frog
I have some shade right here.
habitat? Okay.
Yeah.
And that's north, so that's the south side. Okay, it's hot there.
Yeah. And I mean, I could certainly add some more
I was
trees along in through
wondering
here.
if you had done research on frog habitat and what would be the best in the environment to.
Well, I was thinking that not so much literally frogs, but more of the symbolism of the frogs.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And what are these?
But these, my apple pies.
Yeah, what are they? They're pies. Apple pie.
We had an early morning session once, and these were apple pies and these were poached eggs. We were a little bit hungry that morning. They're the community. This is the community garden right here, and this is the edible garden. And one of the reasons why I was doing the community garden, one of the thoughts I had is I know that there's a lot of maintenance to this yard, and it's always an issue about aftercare. So I was thinking, because most community gardens, you pay a price to come in, and I thought instead of paying, that the community would have hours of service, and also encourage the parents to have hours of service. So I'm trying to be aware that maintenance is an issue at the schools.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I do have one.
Okay.
Do they really break up elementary schools by college topic?
Well, one of
Or
the
emphasis maybe is a better word.
one of the precedents I did was there's a magnet school in Thousand Oaks that's called Earth.
Mm-hmm.
It is a science magnet school, and so they have some outdoor gardens and they have science labs with microscopes, and that's very much the focus of that school. So I was viewing these more as kind of a magnet school that was specified. That's also one of the reasons why I want the students to be able to rotate through the campuses so they can have, an experience of this curriculum here and then a different experience at a different school.
They're all the same disciplines.
Yeah, yeah,
Ostensibly,
yeah.
minor change in the
And one of the things too is that's why I wanted the schools to be so close together so that the students could easily, move between the sites.
I think they do the same thing, Jim, with high schools. That's why we always see the same group of high schools in the National Science Fair. We always see the same 4 or 5 because they, Troy and Granada, and we always see the same 4 or 5 that are in the Nationals because they focus on science. And
I knew that it was at the high school level.
right.
I didn't realize it. Well, I think, and you can put it in the book, that should be sort of a part of the preface to the whole thing. That there's a means to achieve this, they're all in the same district, they're close together, and 2 meetings at the school board, we have it all solved, and kids will be going up and down the wall.
Did you say 2 meetings?
I'm very hopeful for this.
Sounds good to me.
Now, what were some of your inspirations for this?
Well,
I see some here, so I'm just,
there was a lot of typologies that I looked at in terms of
precedents,
Um,
inspiration.
Not too much in terms of schools having specific curriculum ideas. I mean, the magnet schools was my primary thing. I looked at a lot of schools. My son was up in Berkeley, so I drove around a lot of schools up there to see what they were doing with their school grounds, and a lot of them were doing the school gardens and things. I also, one of the things I did with my son when he was a little guy is I took him up to the mission, and we walked around there, and that really, for the California missions and the Indians, that was a huge influence on my design because my son loved that space, and him and the cousins were running all over it. It just made that whole history of California come alive for them. So, does that answer your question? Okay.
Also, sorry, Stephanie, did you have something? Patrick?
And I think this is a really, really strong project. And I really think that moving the classroom from indoors to outdoors, as you've done here, is really an important change in how we're looking at education. And I think the boards state that very clearly. From here, the graphics and the graphics are a little small, but besides that, the stark enough to be read if they're a little bigger.
I was trying to crunch everything on the boards.
I'm not being critical, I'm just saying, and my eyes are bad, so take
So
that with a grain of salt. But the graphics read very clear from here. The depth and shadowing, I think, is a really good lesson for everybody in their graphics, that these read pretty well.
Hers are all hand-drawn, by the way.
And well, there you go. I mean, you can do this on computer drawings as well to enhance it, and I think it really reads well. The other thing I'm very impressed with is how you put your concepts and your big idea diagram on each board, so we know what we're looking at in each design. That's very important. I'm glad to see that you did that.
Yes, Stephanie.
One thing, but when I see that you do this, which I think is certainly an important way to deal with the land that is around Union High School, are you anticipating that this area is public space after hours?
Very much so.
Did you address separation of the school property and the park? Because that's an issue that is typical.
Yeah, and in my book there'll be more detail about how I did that. There's fencing around the gardens here to hopefully try to contain, because I see this more as a public space down in here. So that's one way that I'm addressing it. Over here, I should probably look at that a little bit more. I have some public space right here, the parking is here. The community garden I have kind of off in this area, and I have the multi-lawn use here, so there could be a possibility that I could look into how I can segregate the curriculum area from that. I also was thinking that this might be a really nice place for adult education, for weekends for art classes up in that space as well. Because what I want to do is I want the school to become part of the community, because you drive by and they're all fenced off and they feel very isolated. So, I think there's a balance between the security issues and having the space open to the public. So that's something I definitely want to explore more.
I recommend that in your book you show how you would create that ability. And also, if you drive by LUSD, you can see why they have such a large graduation rate to prisons because of the fencing around it. I would recommend that you propose something that meets similar, just to give an example, that meets, due to a natural change of environment that might enrich that experience and be a celebratory separation.
Okay, that's a good
And
idea.
I think that would really make them very believable.
Thank you.
There's sort of two components to that. One is the security.
Mm-hmm.
The after Newtown up on a fence at Harborview Elementary. I mean, they have plenty of fences, but one gap.
Yeah, they have their chain link fences around all the schools right now.
It's going to be hard to cope with that one, but there's the other one that I work in a number of community parks, which the Irvine Company built for the city. Sometimes the school is next to it and sometimes it's not. But when they were together, there was always the dream of shared use. And as soon as that came up, the lawyers for the city and the school district started thinking about who would be liable for that. So most strict down the middle. Chip on this side, school day.
Because some of the schools right now are currently open on the weekends for the public to come in, the existing schools now. So that's something I can talk to the district and get more information on how they deal with that issue.
You may not have the answer, but you need, in the next week, but you need to be able to answer that question if someone has dealt with communication. I have to say never happened to someone.
Yeah, one of the schools that I was looking at for the site selection, they had a sign and, saying that the public was open, but please clean up after your dogs. So that seemed to be the big issue was dog poop left on campus. So
I think
Friendly
it's a
school
violation.
many,
yeah, absolutely,
close the gate, and,
absolutely, yeah,
you know, it drives you crazy to see this empty yard
yeah,
all weekend long.
yeah.
It's insanity.
Well, hopefully we can change that.
So address it in your book.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, man.
Thank